Welcome back to Push the Pace podcast. This is Riley Tracy.
My name's Sam Phillips. Today we have our very first guest. He is very special to us. He's very beloved. He's one of our friends we grew up playing basketball with. He's known for his hot takes in basketball, so I'm very excited to get some of his opinions today and just to see what he has to say. So, Tyler, how you feeling today, my man?
Feeling good. I'm excited. It's a blessing to be on this podcast. It's something that I've been watching, and I've been excited to be a part of. These guys, they do a great job, and see how I can contribute to it tonight.
Hey, bro, all love, man. We
Sam,
appreciate that.
Back in the day, we didn't even know this when we first met. Again, we used to play upward football together.
That's right.
Did y'all really?
Yeah, we were on the same flag football team.
We have camcorder videos of us. I think I was either 5 or 6, and you would have been 2. And we just have all these pictures and photos, and just my dad would record everything, and he's just on there. I was quarterback, and I think they had you playing center. Yeah.
Dude, you already send me a pic to edit into the pod.
Yeah.
That'd be dope. But, I just want to jump right in. So we already know a little bit about this stuff, but just for the viewers, do you mind giving us a little background in your basketball, what fan base you like, why, what made you love basketball the way you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So basketball, I think it's the greatest game in this world. I always say basketball is like jazz. I think it's the most special sport in the world just because every player, you can have comps and stuff like that, but every single player has different nuances to his game and different ticks, and I don't think there's any player that's, the same. Whereas, in football, baseball, stuff like that, not taking anything away from it, but basketball is just beautiful. You can put jazz music over it and watch it. My favorite team is the Dallas Mavericks. It's just a team that I gravitated to from a young age. My dad got me into it. And basketball is just something that we shared, growing up, and we still do here to this day. We'll go up to the park, put some shots up late at night, and, it's a beautiful game. So
yeah, absolutely.
Definitely something I fell in love with.
Yeah.
So back to the point about jazz, you can always try to compare people like Kobe, and they try to compare Jason Tatum, but there's really not two of the same players in the league ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, facts. So being a Mavs fan, what do you think of their offseason? What do you think of what they've been doing so far?
I think it's fantastic. I do think, being a Mavs fan, obviously I'm, familiar with the Mavs fan base. One thing about it is I believe that a lot of the moves are overstated. Rashawn Holmes, I just don't see anything going on with that. I'd be happy if he could get traded. He's eligible to be traded starting today. So I'd be cool with that. But there's got to be a move that overlaps into something, right? And, I think Nico Harrison, what he's done since he took over, it's just been a breath of fresh air. I'm 22. Most of my life, we just kind of had a stagnant front office, if you want to put it that way, put it lightly. Shadow GM maybe. That's a whole different iceberg that we can get into. But yeah, I think the addition of Grant Williams, I think that's understated by the NBA community. I think you're going to see a lot of him. Not necessarily handling the ball, but I do think you're going to see a lot of handoffs, a lot of creation from him. Wouldn't be surprised if he averaged 3 or 4 assists this year. Just because he's somebody, he's a cerebral player. He can kick it out to the corner, and so much of that gravity is going to go towards Luka and Kai, obviously. Throw out Seth Curry out there, Josh Green, Jaden Hardy, and let Grant Williams do his thing. I think you're going to see a whole different version of him that Jason Kidd's going to unlock.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Luka and Kyrie, how deep do you think that duo can take them?
All the way.
Yeah.
All the way. I think basketball, to me, there's only 10 players on the court, right? You got 5 going one way, 5 going another. So if you look at it, it's one of the only sports where one player can really take the gravity of the game. Typically, in playoffs, I always say basketball is a whole different sport come springtime. It's a whole different game. The game slows down. That benefits players like Luka and Kyrie. We've seen it historically. They're 2 of, historic playoff performers. With that being said, that's 2 guys. I always say personally, typically the best player on the court is going to win the series every time. More often than not, you might have the 2 best players on the court. So that's 2 guys, any given game, they can combine for 80 points, 90 points. And, that's not a hyperbole in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And you said something about Rashawn Holmes. You don't think there's anything there. But on the other hand, Mark Cuban's saying things like, he's the most underrated pickup of the offseason. So with that being said, do you think that Luka and Kyrie have the pieces that they need to go all the way now? Or do you think they're still missing someone?
I do think that we have all the pieces, and that may not be this year, and that's okay. You look at a lot of times, there's 30 teams in the NBA, right? It's almost impossible for, your team to win consecutive years. That's why teams like the Warriors, I know a lot of people don't necessarily like what, they've done here in the past 6 or 7 years. I love it. Just as a fan of the game, it's greatness. You're never going to be able to see that again. So I do think we have the pieces. It may not happen this year, but again, I trust this front office. Jason Kidd, I personally love what he's doing. There's always, something to be said about coaching and stuff like that, but he's a player's coach. I think if you look at our, 2021, 2022 playoffs, his X's and O's and ATOs coming out of the timeout was just fantastic. I think we wouldn't have got that far had somebody else been running the show, quite possibly.
100%. Well, cool. I want to go ahead and move on from that. I want to get into like some general NBA topics and questions. I just want to see where your mind's at and see what you think, because I know you're someone who has a very high basketball knowledge, very high basketball IQ. So I'm excited to hear what you say. But like I said in the beginning, he's known for his hot takes, so this could get very interesting. So the first question I have for you today: who are your dark horse teams to head into the season? So for context, the Kings were the dark horse team. Was the dark horse team last year because no one expected them to be as good as they were, and they ended up third seed. So who are some teams that you see in your eyes could do the same thing this year?
Yeah, so whenever I look at it, the Kings, quite frankly, I just don't think that they're all what they put out to be. That doesn't pertain to the question at all. But if we're gonna go dark horse, obviously everybody wants the flashy. Who do you think is gonna go far in the playoffs? Who could be a surprise? Finals appearance. But to me, I think taking steps forward in the NBA is just a huge accomplishment itself. I'm looking at teams like the Orlando Magic. I'm looking at teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder. They kind of already moved the needle. I think that was the biggest success of last year was the Oklahoma City Thunder. And it's not a stretch to say that they didn't play with their second best player all season. I think Giddey, he's more established. He's a great player. He's going to be an all-star for years to come. But I'm somebody that's high on Chet Holmgren. He's got all the tools, to give you that Porzingis mold, kind of that unicorn a little bit. He's my pick for Rookie of the Year. Chet Holmgren is. Over Wemby. I think Wemby is going to be the better player next year. But, whenever the journalists are voting on that kind of stuff, they're going to be looking at wins and losses. I think San Antonio might struggle to reach 26 wins, whereas Oklahoma City might eclipse 40. But really, I want to go back to the Magic. I'm somebody that's very high on the Magic. One of our former assistant coaches here in Dallas is running the show over there in Orlando. Jamal Mosley, he's fantastic. Player development wise, just relationship with the players, he's absolutely fantastic. And I'm not just talking about Paulo Banchero. More namely, I'm talking about the supporting pieces around them. They're all so young, but I'm looking at guys like Franz Wagner. I'm looking at guys like Markelle Fultz. I mean, everybody just seemingly wrote him off. You're not a number one pick by accident. Kwame Brown wasn't on accident. Markelle Fultz is not on accident. None of these players are on accident. These are, all world scouting departments that are looking at these guys. And I think it's easy for people to forget, Markelle Fultz was consensus number one over Jason Tatum, over other players, and that stuff just doesn't go away. Markelle Fultz shot 38% from distance last year. It wasn't, necessarily high volume. But other guys, Jalen Suggs, I think they nailed the draft, getting Jet Howard and Anthony Black. That's two players that can immediately come in there and contribute. And then, of course, there's been a running joke on Twitter about Orlando's the rehabilitation center for big man. I mean, you're looking at guys like Franz's brother, Moritz Wagner, Wendell Carter Jr. He's not, wowing anybody, right? But box numbers, he's in there.
I think he's a great player, to be honest with you.
I think, and I think a 5 may not be his position. He might be best suited for a 4 spot. But Orlando, I mean, that's the team that I'm watching. I think Orlando, they could sneak in there in the East. In one of you guys' earlier podcasts, you talked about Miami, maybe faltering a little bit coming into this season. I agree with you. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. I think it is, you can't really knock Heat culture. I mean, you're looking at Pat Riley and Spoelstra. I think that they'll make the playoffs for sure. But with the way that the NBA has got this play-in tournament, the way the sport of basketball is set up, it's a make-or-miss league. All it takes, in that play-in game is, what happens if Jimmy Butler shoots 1 for 15 like we all know he can. I mean, fantastic player. I think he's top 10 in the game. But what happens if he goes 1 for 15? What do they have outside of that? Really?
Yeah.
So going back to the Magic, since they're your dark horse team, what seed would you predict them to be at?
I'm thinking anywhere from 8 to 11. And I know they finished 11 or 12 last year, but I do think the win number is going to be, pushed up. I think the morale of the team, I think the perspective of the team is going to be a lot higher. I think that they're going to finish this season kind of about where people are feeling about Oklahoma City right now.
They're just about to take their next stepping stone.
Right. And, and that's the thing, too, just sports in general, not even just really the game of basketball is, fans and public perception, social media. I think that everybody, wants everything to be in a hurry, right? Things take time, I mean, Absolutely. You look at everything in life. I mean, you can't just plant a seed and expect a big moss tree to grow up, a year later. Things take time. And Orlando, I think, is going to be a team to deal with in the East for the next decade.
100%.
Powerhouse.
I want to backtrack even further to what you said at the beginning of the question because I'm very interested in what you said. You said that you don't think the Kings are all out what everyone makes them to be. So I kind of want to hone in on that subject for a second because I'm a big believer in De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis. I love their duo. I think they're a top 5 duo in the league. So what makes you say they're not all what they're cracked up to be?
Well, to me, I'm just, I'm watching games last year, right? And I mean, to put it in perfect perspective, look at that first round series against the Warriors. Mm-hmm. There's 2 sides you can go about this, and I'll, talk about both of them. But Golden State, right, it's unfortunate they got matched up against them. I mean, I don't care if Golden State was the 8 seed and Sacramento was the 1 seed. Numbers don't matter in the playoffs. It's Golden State, championship pedigree. They've been there. They knew exactly what they were doing. And, Golden State, it's not the best kept secret. They were angling to play Sacramento on purpose. Multiple teams were. Yeah. And there's a reason for that.
Because they're young.
And for me, on top of being young, that's a very fast team. Mm-hmm. Like I said earlier, the sport of basketball, it's a complete different sport come springtime. The game is slowed down, exponentially. And, those players that are just full steam ahead, like De'Aaron Fox, not taking anything away from him. He's great. But, they just kind of run into some issues every year. Look at Memphis with Ja. Look at, just other players that have taken a second, just to get acclimated. And I'm not saying that I don't think they can't, go forward and build on that. But to me, it felt a little too good to be true with them. Mm. So
another thing kind of going against the Kings is I don't really think they made any significant moves. Oh. They really didn't do anything to improve their roster. They
did get world beater JaVale McGee.
Yeah. Nerlens Noel as well. Yeah. But does that move the needle? I don't think so.
Not,
yeah. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to our next question. So this one's going to be real interesting because we have talked a little bit personally in the past about this kind of topic. So this will be fun. Who do you have as your top 3 overrated players in the league?
Currently or all time?
Currently.
Okay. Number 1 for me has got to be Jason Tatum.
He's number 1 overrated?
Yeah, I don't even think he's the best player on his own team. I think the best player on his team is somebody that can't even dribble the basketball, and that's Jaylen Brown. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, whenever I'm looking at, all world players, and I think Jason Tatum's top 10, but I think the issue is, people start talking about, oh, he's top 5, we're going to throw him in there. I think Anthony Edwards is better than Jason Tatum. I mean, I'll take him every day of the week and twice on Sundays. But, Jason Tatum, again, not taking anything away from him, but, I always think back to that 2022 NBA Finals. Yeah. I mean, he had the infamous, I got you, Kobe. Mm-hmm. And what'd you get him? I mean, 4 for 17, right? I mean,
that's facts.
And let's give credit to Andrew Wiggins, for doing all that. But Jason Tatum, let's go Karl Anthony Towns for sure. Mm-hmm. And again, fantastic player. All of these players are great. It's just, public perception. I've seen plenty of people say, oh, he's the best shooting big man of all time.
He said that himself.
He's the best shooting big man. He did say that, and that's just a little crazy to me.
Yeah. If it's true, you don't have to say it.
Yeah, and I think my 3rd most overrated player here in the game, and of course a lot of people watching are going to just be expecting big superstar names. At this point in his career, I'm going to say Klay Thompson. I think he brings a lot of value to the game, right? I think people just because of the name might think that he's top 30. I got him about top 50. They're on the edge. I think he's closer to Josh Hart than he is to Paul George. And that's not a knock on him. Josh Hart's fantastic.
Josh Hart is fantastic.
You put Klay on a different team, I don't think he makes an impact like he does on the Warriors.
I completely agree. And I think that's here currently. I think, go back 5-6 years and, of course, injuries, ACL, MCL, meniscus, whatever he dealt with, that definitely played a part in it. But at the end of the day, go back 5 or 6 years, I think he could have been the same player on most other teams. But right now, I mean, I'd probably rather have Josh Hart on my team. if I didn't have Steph Curry.
Yeah, I'm looking at it a little bit of a different angle because my personal experience, I was a shooter all my life, so I kind of gravitate toward the shooters. Clay is one of the best shooters ever in history. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it wasn't for Steph being on his team, he would be highlighted as one of the best shooters of all time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he still kind of is. So it's kind of hard for me to like think that he wouldn't be the same player because if you can shoot, you have a place on a team, and he plays good defense too. Like his defense can't be overlooked. So
but
yeah,
you think without Steph's gravity, he would still shoot like that?
I do because his release is just beautiful. His release is beautiful. It's quick. It's hard to guard. Like he stole Steph's record at one point for shooting the most threes in a game, and that's not by accident. Like I think they may have even stopped focusing on Steph even more that game just because of how hot he was. Like Clay's one of those people. I think he can get hotter than Steph Curry can get, just because of how consistent he is with his form. Steph Curry's form is just kind of it's not as consistent, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, let's not forget Clay had 53 points on 16 dribbles. I think that's one of the most nobody talks about that. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the most fantastic things to me over the history of this game.
Yeah, that's hard.
That's something that I think deserves to be talked about weekly. You should see that coming up on your Twitter feed. Mm-hmm. That's one of the best sporting feats I've ever seen in my life.
100%.
I mean, basketball, one of the fundamentals is you got to dribble that ball. He didn't do it, and he still scored half 100 points.
Yep, just catch and shoot.
Yeah, so fantastic player, not taking anything away from him. It's just a lot of stuff that he couldn't control.
Yeah.
And, public perception, name-wise and stuff like that, I think that he's incredibly overrated at this point. And I'll put Bradley Beal in there, honorable mention as well.
Gotcha.
You got to do more than score that ball on a 30-win team.
That's a good take. I actually like that.
Don't shoot the messenger, but
but Suns fans are going to be coming for your neck. I hope you know that.
And that's fine, But to me, he's Duke's R.J. Barrett here this year. So, let him take that back seat to maybe even Cam Reddish at this point, But and not take anything away from him. It's just that's the way it is, I mean, he's going to be there to, I don't know, shoot that ball, I guess. I mean, there's nothing else he's providing to you whatsoever.
I mean, they came out and said he was going to be the point guard for them.
It should be Devin Booker. I think he's a top 4 player in this game. I think he could be an incredible point guard. I've seen passing flashes and fantastic defender. I think he's the most underrated player in the NBA.
Oh, wow.
Love me some Devin Booker.
Yeah, I'm glad you transitioned into that because my next question was, who is your top 3 underrated? Would you put Booker at 1?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd put Devin Booker down at 1, or up at 1, I guess we could say. Number 2, let's go Kristaps Porzingis for sure.
Really?
I mean, I'm somebody, it's kind of contrary to how I usually operate, but, I always think the best ability is availability, right? Mm-hmm. He did play 65 games last year. That qualifies for NBA stats, stuff like that. I want to say that was more than Embiid. Nobody bats an eye at that. Porzingis just very quietly averaged 23.5 points a game. He's averaging career high, and rebounds. I want to say he eclipsed 10. I think he had 3 assists. He's showing, flashes of being able to pass that ball out of the post and incredible rim presence. If you look at advanced metrics, he, had the best, rim presence grade in the NBA. I mean, that dude I'd say he's a top 10 big man in the league without question.
Yeah, I think if Porzingis didn't have injuries in his career, we'd be talking about he's a top 5 player in the league right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you think that the Celtics adding him and dropping Marcus Smart makes them a contender?
No, because I feel like that they were miles away from being a contender.
Before then?
Yeah, I think the last time they were a contender in my life was, whenever they had Ray Allen and Paul Pierce. And
oh, wow.
Rondo
not even they were in the finals?
No. It should have been, it should have been Brooklyn in that finals or, I don't know. It shouldn't have been Boston, quite frankly. I mean, your best player, you don't know if he's going to shoot 20% or if he's going to shoot 57%, So it's one of those deals where I would have kept Marcus Smart. I would have looked into, trading either Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. And I know, it's almost impossible to, start that notion of should I trade Jason Tatum, especially if you're the GM, right? If you're Brad Stevens, you can't sit there and say, hey, the guy's on the block. Sometimes, your biggest addition could be subtraction, and it's one of those deals where it's not going to work. I've always been very, I don't want to say pro-tank, but I've always been very pro-rebuild. You can easily figure out if something's going to work or not. Cleveland, never going to work. Donovan Mitchell's got to go elsewhere. I'd keep Garland and throw everything else out. Keep Garland, keep Mobley for sure. But, at the end of the day, they have plenty of good players. It's not going to work out there. Like I said, 1 out of 30 teams gets to win every year. And so I feel like you know early on if something's going to work or not.
Yeah, that's very true. Is there any other teams that you kind of fit into that mold of they keep going with the same formula but it's not working? Or is that kind of it and that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, the one that sticks out namely, let's throw Philadelphia in there. I'm a big James Harden guy. He's probably my favorite player of all time. I think he rewrote the way that the game is played, and I think that doesn't get talked about enough. But it's not working right now. His style of game, I'm not big on. A lot of people like talking about usage rates and stuff like that. I do think high usage rate can translate to a championship. I think that you'll see that with Luka here coming up in a few years. You look at Michael Jordan all those years, Kobe, it's fine. If you're, like I said, if your team is good, you're good. But Philadelphia just doesn't have the pieces around him. I don't want to say really around him. Obviously they're going to go around Embiid, but I think Embiid's on his way out of there too. I think that whole team's about to just get torn down.
Do you think Chicago, with their team they have right now, they can figure it out? Or
Chicago's a good one.
Absolutely not. No, I don't know why they ever thought they could. It's just one of those deals where, I know that they were the first seed for 13 games in 2021. Yeah, and it was a small sample size. I mean, every year we see teams. I think the Wizards started out not this past season, but the year before, 10-2. Yeah. Look at two teams this year. Utah started out 21-9. I mean, anybody with a pair of working eyes would have known they would have struggled to finish with 30 wins this year. I wasn't buying into it. Look at teams like Portland. Portland started out, they were the number one seed until close to December. It's rather obvious it's not going to work out. And Portland's a good team too. They should have, I'd say after 2017, 2018, get rid of McCollum, try and build earlier around Dame. Because I think Dame could have been the star, the face of a championship team. I don't think he can do that anymore. But
it's too late?
I do think it's too late. I think he can be one of your faces. I think if he goes to Miami, that completely changes the narrative. Just because I'm big on Bam Adebayo, he can pass, dribble, shoot, play defense most importantly. You're going to need somebody down there banging around with Julius Randle and, Joel Embiid, Giannis. You're looking at stuff like that. You got a game plan for stuff like that. I think Miami could definitely benefit from Damian Lillard, and I'd say they'd be my favorites coming out of the East. I think one player can change the landscape, really.
I'm a big believer in I think Dame could have a ring if they kept CJ McCollum and looked for another piece to go with them. A lot of people might disagree with that, but I love CJ McCollum. I'm a big fan of CJ McCollum. I think that he should have stayed in Portland and they should have went more different in the forward to center range instead of trading McCollum.
You weren't a fan of Mo Harkless or Evan Turner? Or?
No,
yeah, I don't think anybody was. I'm joking with you.
I think that's where they started going wrong, man. They looked in the wrong direction. They were contending every single year. They were going 2 rounds, 3 rounds deep in the playoffs every year, and then they decided to go away from CJ McCollum, who was their second highest scorer on the team. And it's so confusing to me. I'm like, why don't you just go get a big man to complement those two? I mean, Nurkic is great, but I don't think you win a championship with him as your starting center.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, I believe it was 18-19. They went to the Western Conference Finals. Unfortunately for them, they got matched up against Golden State.
Yeah.
Just one of those deals where that's one of those teams where year in and year out, they're going to be there.
Yeah.
There's not really anything you can do about it. Which on that note, I think the NBA is in a great spot. There's a lot of parity in the league right now. I don't think there's a clear team that you can really say, hey, they're going to be a problem. I think you got problems all over the league, which is a great problem for Adam Silver and great problem, for fans of the game like us. But, their best years, similar to the Houston Rockets, it was at a time where, there was no parity in the league. You knew it was going to be Cleveland. You knew it was going to be Golden State. I can't really think of any acquisitions off the top of my head from other teams, that people thought would maybe move the needle. But, it wasn't happening.
Yeah, I agree. So kind of transitioning out of that, we talked about teams that aren't really that are using the same formula, aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I want to ask you, what is your finals prediction going into this next season? What are the 2 teams you see making it to the finals?
Yeah, out of the East, off the top of my head, I know this is one that a lot of people aren't going to like to hear. I think this might be the most well-built team I've ever seen in my life, ever, and that's the New York Knicks. I'm looking at the East. The East doesn't scare me a bit. There's not a single team in there that's like, oh, let me get spooked out about.
The Bucks?
No, their second best player, to me, is Drew Holiday, which still isn't good enough. But a lot of people are going to say Chris Middleton. He's a shell of himself.
He hasn't been the same.
And, even whenever he was, himself, just, again, not moving the needle for me. To get to that finals, you got to have solid pieces. But I'm looking at New York. I'm looking at Boston. I do think just the way the landscape of the East is. Again, I'm not super high on them. I just think the East is just it's weak right now. I think your champion is going to come out of the West, no matter what. But I'm looking at Boston. I'm looking at, New York, Milwaukee. They got a new coach there.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of turmoil going on around there. The one big question mark they're going to have for this year and going into the following season is going to be, is Giannis going to re-sign? I mean, they're more focused on an extension at this point. They're more focused on a signature than they are getting a ring there. And rightfully so. It's a scary thought thinking about, one of the best players ever leaving your team. But I mean, really off the top of my dome, I'd say New York Knicks. That team is solidly built, and I do think that they will finish the season with Joel Embiid on their team.
What?
I do.
You think New York's going to trade for Embiid?
It's either him, Utah, or Oklahoma City. And he's not going to go to Utah. Sorry, Jazz fans. I mean, no one wants to go there. He's not as good as Carlos Boozer. He was a little bit better at handling that.
Do you think New York has more pieces to go get him?
It's one of those deals where I think if anybody's got the pieces, it's Utah or Oklahoma City. But, with the way – I think Joel Embiid's got some pull and some say in this. If I told you guys, hey, y'all want to go on vacation to Oklahoma City, Salt Lake, or New York? Pretty easy answer. Pretty easy answer.
I think that's a little different for basketball, though. But I get what you're saying, though. Like, it's better landmark, it's a better market.
Yeah, if I was a basketball player, the one place I'd want to go play would either be Indianapolis or New York. That's the meccas of basketball. Mm-hmm. Indiana, they created basketball, and then you look at New York, it's just like, you got Rucker Park out there, and just the culture of the game. You got Spike Lee watching you every night, and
100%.
So he'll be a New York Knick here, either this year or maybe next year.
Wow, that's a take. So you have New York coming out of the East. Who do you have coming out of the West? If you had to guess,
The Lakers, and they're gonna be your finals champs, and they're gonna sweep the Knicks. It's just whoever they play, that team just top to bottom. They got 15 players that can play in a finals game. It's almost impossible to say.
How do you feel about that Christian Wood trade or signing?
Fantastic for them. You look at the ideal four, he might come off the bench, just like he did really mostly with Dallas this past season. But if you're looking at the ideal four next to, an Anthony Davis, I think in today's game, to kind of mitigate a lot of the wear and tear on his body, talking about Anthony Davis, you're going to want him kind of down there in the post, just doing his thing, get yourself set up on the block. Whereas Christian Wood, he can pop out anywhere. That's a, 40% shooter from distance, that somebody got to close out on. That also, opens up the door for a lot of one-on-one matchups for AD. I think AD might be the best big man in basketball.
When healthy.
Right, yeah, when healthy. And that's a big, win, right? You don't know if he's going to be healthy or not. But, it's a lot of one-on-one matchups for AD, and then Christian Wood's going to be out there spraying. LeBron, I think he's the best player ever. I still think he's arguably the best player in the game right now. At will, he can get 40 if he wants to, and nobody's stopping him. Mm-hmm. So I think the Lakers, that's your team coming out the West.
Okay. Do you see anybody? You said Lakers very confidently. Do you see anybody competing with the Lakers?
Absolutely not. No.
Not a single team in the West.
Maybe the Dallas Mavericks, just because again, they got two of the top 10 players in the game. I think they got the second best player in the game, and I think they probably have the 10th best player, in Luka and Kyrie, respectively. But at the end of the day, it takes a village against, somebody like this Lakers team is built. The one thing I will say, Darvin Ham, I'm not sold on him. If I was them, I know people are going to say, oh, well, he just went to the Western Conference Finals. Why are we talking about job security? You either have it or you don't. He doesn't have it.
What about the Nuggets, the reigning champs?
No, they're not my champs.
They're not your champs?
No, they're not my champs. They're not my champs. That's one of the most god-awful finals runs I've ever seen in my life. I wouldn't be surprised if they never even reached the Western Conference Finals ever again. That team is pitiful.
Wow.
It's pitifully built. They're, to me, Jokic is not even a top 2 big man in the league.
Oh, man.
He's not doing it for me. He's not.
Wait. Why is he not top 2? Because Jokic is.
Well, because Joel Embiid exists, for one, and for two, if I'm really looking at it, if I'm like, okay, would you rather have Anthony Davis for 48 minutes or Jokic? Anthony Davis, 10 times out of 10. That's just me personally. I just want somebody that can alter it defensively. I will say Jokic stepped up his game defensively in the playoffs.
Yeah, he did.
Which, again, points back to slower pace of the game. He's able to get up in the court a little bit more easier. And that's not, that is a knock on him. I'm not going to say it's not, but, everybody wants to talk about his cardio and how he's transitioned his body. He's got a lot more work to do.
Yeah, he does have a lot more work to do, but he won a ring with that body. So it's hard to say that he can't do it again.
He did, but he also played against the Miami Heat,
Yeah.
Which is just, that's a graveyard shift right there. They're not, that's your Ross dressed for less Eastern Conference champions right there. So.
And one more point for that. The Lakers and the Nuggets faced off in the playoffs this year. Obviously, it's not the same team now. They got a lot of more additions. AD looked like he could not stop Jokic to save his life. So my question is, if you think they can't even compete, who's going to guard Jokic? Because it's not Christian Wood. It's not Jackson Hayes.
I think it'd be Anthony Davis.
You still think Anthony Davis will?
If it needs to be, it'll be LeBron. Jared Vanderbilt. They have options there. Look at Rui. Rui kind of gave him fits game one. I know it was just one game. But, for me, like I said, there's parity in the league. It's almost impossible to repeat. The Nuggets, I think Jamal Murray, he's gonna have to regress to the mean at some point. He's all-time playoff performer, right? He's just not, that's not who he is. I'm sorry. Jamal Murray, that's not who you are, my guy. And, you're going to have to regress to the mean at some point, and it happens to everybody. He's not going to average 40 points a game forever.
It's also hard to repeat when your team got worse this offseason. The Nuggets,
they lost two great players, 100%. Bruce Brown and Jeff Green, right? Yeah. That's two high-end role players that they lost. Right. So they did get worse, but I don't know. I just think if you have a top 5 player in the league, you always have a chance. And I believe Jokic is one as of right now. I think he has that spot. You may not agree, but I think he deserves it after the finals performance he had, for sure. Did you have something to add?
Well, I heard him talk about LeBron was your GOAT. So you really think LeBron's the GOAT over MJ?
Yeah, to me, this is the one argument that I always, bring up. I don't know if I brought it up around y'all off camera or not. And it might sound a little silly, but I think it's an incredibly important conversation to have. We might have UFOs here in the world. If the Martians, were looking out there and said, we're going to invade Earth. And, President Joe Biden came up to you and said, I need you to select one player to compete in a one-on-one against an alien, to save humanity. How are you not going LeBron James? Really, if you got to put all the bias aside, all the memes, all the bias, all the hatred, right? There's no way I'm taking Michael Jordan over. I'm looking at prototypical body. LeBron is 6'8", can jump out of the gym. That's an alien body right there, and he's polished.
You can't use that as a GOAT argument, because I'd choose KD honestly for a 1v1.
I'm different from that. In that hypothetical situation in a one-on-one, I'm going Kobe Bryant. But he's not my GOAT. Kobe's not my GOAT. Yeah. But in that situation, I'm going Kobe just because of how just his work ethic, dude. He practiced one shot literally 12, 13 hours straight.
Okay, so let's pivot then to applicable history then to answer that question. So let's look at LeBron is, 4-6 in his finals career? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the big thing that everybody bring up. Jordan's 6-0. Yeah. Michael Jordan played against plumbers, okay? Michael Jordan played against guys like us. We were in the NBA Finals in the 90s, and Michael Jordan beat us. So you're looking at LeBron's finals appearances. Dude was, 26 years old, playing against the Spurs, at the height of their powers. You're looking at guys like Bruce Bowen, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan. You're looking at guys like that, and you're expecting a 26-year-old, 25-year-old, to carry the load. And the rest of that Cleveland team, let's look at pretty similar to, imagine if Anthony Edwards led the Timberwolves to the finals and had to play against the Bucks. That's pretty similar, right? So, and that's a team even better than the Bucks. So I'm looking, more down the future, the big error on that is going to be the 2011 finals. It's a huge blemish that you're never going to be able to take off. It's a stain, but, more credit needs to be given to that Mavs team for how well they were built and coached. Yeah. They had Rick Carlisle running the show. Terry Stotts was your assistant. Dwayne Casey was your other assistant. And then you had to run into, the greatest team of all time, the Warriors. And so there's really just not much you can do about it. I'm looking at who he played, and just I think the talent disparity from one era to another is just light years ahead of the other. I'm looking at teams that Michael Jordan played against. The dude didn't even advance past the first round until his 9th season in the league. 100%. So cool. You gambled, you were cool. You talk nasty to people. You're likable. But, at the end of the day, aesthetics and flash, don't move the needle for me.
Yeah, I'm also a big believer in everything you're saying. Like, I believe the competition, like the skill level in today's NBA is so much more evolved.
Oh, yeah.
Like, people back then literally couldn't dribble with their offhand.
Right.
People couldn't make moves with their offhand. People couldn't finish with their offhand.
Yeah.
He would face people like people would say, "Oh, he faced the bad boy Pistons." Like, what would they do? Foul you hard?
Punch you in the face.
They throw you down. They foul you hard. That's not basketball.
I mean, the best way to beat them is one escape dribble, and they wouldn't know what they're doing. They think that you're practicing witchcraft. They didn't know what escape dribbles were 40 years ago.
Imagine if Kyrie Irving played against the Pistons.
Yeah.
With the bad boy Pistons. That'd be crazy.
I feel bad for him driving in the lane, but
Yeah.
Bill Laimbeer might have a heyday.
Yeah, but I'm obviously on your side. I know Riley disagrees.
Yeah, I just don't see LeBron doing what he's doing in a more physical era.
Well, I think I look at it, and I think LeBron's more of a physical specimen than anybody in the NBA ever has been. I think it's fair to say that he could compete in any era. But again, it's one of those deals where Michael Jordan's your one. That's fine. I mean, it's hard to argue against that. I think it's almost impossible. I think it all just kind of goes down to what do you prefer? What are you looking for in your ideal basketball player? Mm-hmm. So, I think Michael Jordan being one, that's fine. I thought he was the best player ever until about a year and a half ago. I don't really know what changed it for me. I guess I just started thinking about aliens. But, alien life out there and who I would get to protect me, and that would be my glorious King James. So.
With LeBron, what team would you want to see, other than the Mavericks, what team would you want to see LeBron on?
To end his career?
The New York Knicks.
Yeah.
That's the Mecca of basketball. Bring it home, baby. That's have Spike Lee out there while you're holding up your 5th championship or wherever you're at that point. I think he'd be a great mentor for a player like Jalen Brunson. Not that he really needs one. I mean, he's probably arguably the most cerebral player we have in the game. But I think, if they could get him without having to trade away substantial pieces, that'd be an easy chance for him to win a ring too.
What if he went and teamed up with Donovan Mitchell and returned back in Cleveland?
I think that would be incredibly intriguing. I think that was a conversation I was having with one of my buddies. Cleveland, again, they're building a team, right? I don't think it's going to be a championship team. I mean, that's your 50 win, a season. They're going to be there first, second round every year. But a player like LeBron could easily, book them as the favorites. Mm-hmm. I think that'd be, incredibly intriguing. I always, like seeing people play in their hometown. So if you're seeing this, Marcus Smart, just come home to Dallas.
I'm kind of in the minority. I kind of want LeBron to finish his career with the Warriors because he's said multiple times he wants to play with Steph Curry. I think that it's in the back of his mind.
I would like that too.
I know people are going to hate it if it happens. That would be the most hated team in NBA history probably. But I think it would be amazing basketball.
Yeah, I just, as an enthusiast, you just love watching high-level games. I don't blame KD for what he did whatsoever. I mean, you play to win the game. And, imagine, you're in a street ball setting, right? You just got your butt kicked, 4 games in a row, and the team that's been beating you is like, hey, I want you to come play on my team. Hell yeah. I'm not thinking twice about that, So, I mean, if I was KD, I'd be like, let's go. Because Thunder, another one of those teams, they were never going to do it. Never going to do it. So, I don't blame them whatsoever. I praise KD for doing that.
Cool. So, now that we're done with the GOAT topic, I love that. I want to transition back into the upcoming season. I want to go back to more predictions. Who do you think is going to be the MVP this year? Who do you think is going to show out the most? Who do you think is going to really lead their team to success this year? And who's going to stand out?
Yeah, I think, I'm looking at the players that are always going to be in that, bubble, right? So I'm going process of elimination. Curry, I think wins numbers, they take a little step back. It's inevitable. You can't beat Father Time unless you're LeBron. But, Steph Curry, we're going to go ahead and take him out. They might be around the 44, 40, 47 win mark. I'm looking at teams really that have a chance for that growth, and I don't see the Sixers getting any more of that growth. I think if a big man wins the MVP again, it's going to be Jokic. Just stat-wise and, wins-wise and stuff like that, they're going to be up there. But, and this is the easy answer, right? And people are going to say, oh, well, you said, you were from Dallas and stuff like that. I'm looking at Luka Doncic. I mean, eventually they're going to come through and win 48, 50 games. I mean, this guy's been putting in the work. He's been conditioning himself, doing all that. And I think this is going to be the best, rendition of Luka Doncic that you've ever seen. And that's kind of crazy to think about. Dude just averaged 33 points a game, 32 points a game, high-level shooting, had a 60-point game under his belt. And I'm looking at it, if the Mavericks can get 48, 49 wins, I think Luka's your home run pick.
Really?
And similar to that being said, I think look at SGA down there in Oklahoma City. Keep an eye on him. The NBA, they would love for a small market player to win that. So at some point, you got to start looking at other avenues. We're kind of ushering in a new day of basketball here, and that's fantastic. I'm looking at Luka and SGA, even Ant Edwards. If they can make that leap, which they won't. Spoiler alert. He might average 28, 8, and 8. Maybe not the 8 assists, but they're going to struggle to win 42, 43 games unless they trade away Cat. The move there is stay with Gobert and then build your team out elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But
So you said the Mavericks, 48 win team, so they're predicted to get the betting odds was 44 wins. You would take the over on that?
over. Put your house mortgage on it.
Oh, yeah.
Put your house mortgage on these Dallas Mavericks.
I love that.
You can get a new house.
Okay, so I want to ask you, transitioning back to all time. I want to get back away from the present for a second. You mentioned LeBron's your GOAT. So I got to ask, who is your all-time starting five plus your sixth man? I want to hear it.
Can we go positionless? Since that's the way that the game is meant to be played?
Yep.
All right. Let's go. Let's just go LeBron, MJ, Kobe. Hakeem is my best big man ever. He's going to be on that team.
You got Hakeem over Shaq?
I do. And my four, I want somebody that can stretch it out for us. I got 4 players on my team, obviously Hakeem, and then the other 3 guys. They're not making you, shiver in your boots, behind the arc. Let's go Dirk. And that's not a homer pick. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm not homer picking that. But Dirk will be my 4. I'm looking at it as a team with insane athleticism. People forget, if I end up with 2002, 2003 Dirk on my team before the knee issues, the dude can get up and down. He can play above the rim, and he's running transition with you. Just imagine the fast break, how just deafening it would be to try and stop, LeBron, Kobe, and Mike, in the open court. You're not doing that. They're just flying by you. It'd be like watching Team USA versus Netherlands or something here in, FIBA. So it's just one of those deals where I'm looking at, speed of the game and traits and stuff like that. That team can slow it down and play in the half court, and they can beat you in the transition as well. If you can do both of those things, that's a recipe for success.
Mm-hmm. Who you got for your sixth man?
Steph Curry.
Steph Curry.
Yeah, it would be Steph Curry. I did think about Magic Johnson. I'm watching Winning Time right now on HBO Max. Fantastic show. Y'all got to check it out. So I've just been thinking about him a lot. Pause. But I've been thinking about Magic, but I think Steph Curry, I need as much shooting, much stretchability as I can get on that floor. Why not grab the best shooter ever?
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned Curry and Magic. Sure enough, they just had a pod. Curry called himself the best point guard of all time over Magic. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think I'm looking at, whenever I'm thinking all the time about, what player might edge out the other one, that's a close one, And again, it just kind of goes to who do you prefer as your ideal point guard? If you're looking at traditional point guards, right, I want somebody to conduct the offense. I want somebody that can play defense from the half court, maybe in the full court, and that's Magic, right? But at the end of the day, Curry can pass that ball. I know his assist numbers don't jump off the page at you, but he can pass that ball, and he's the best shooter ever. And I think just the way he changed the game, for better or for worse, he left his footprint on basketball more than any other player ever has. And I think whenever you're looking at legacy-wise, the question I ask is, did you leave the game in a better place than what you found it? And I think he definitely did. I think, him, and on that note, I think Dirk, they're the 2 most influential players ever. Yeah. I put Allen Iverson up there too.
Yeah, and you said James Harden earlier in the pod as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, that doesn't always translate to who's better, who's not. But, did you change the game? Did you put your wrinkle on it? And, he's somebody that I think just, if you have a snow globe right here, he just shook it up all kinds of ways. Mm-hmm. And now you're just seeing, kind of the ripple, and the residual effects on it, and I think Curry, I got to give him my edge for that. Just the way that he changed the game. And that's credit to Mark Jackson. People talk about Steve Kerr, stuff like that, but Mark Jackson, he took him off that leash and said, let's do your thing, start cooking. So I give it to Curry.
Okay.
My opinion, as a point guard, I'm going back to the Curry Magic point guard. Mm-hmm. For a point guard, for me, is someone that can control the game. And Magic, he controlled the game at a huge, what was he, 6'9"?
Yeah. Played center in the 1980 NBA Finals as a rookie.
As a point guard, a 6'9" point guard that could handle the ball, dish the ball out like he did, and his size is everything on defense. So I would just pick Magic for mine.
That's completely valid, you know. I mean, it's just one of those deals where he does everything better than Curry besides shoot that ball. Yeah. I just think, you know, the presence around that shot, you know, is just – there's always been a place, even 40 years ago, if you can shoot that ball, you're playing. But, you know, again, it's one of those deals where it's tough, you know. I mean, there's no wrong answer there.
Mm-hmm. So my last question to you, I got through everything on the page. My last question to you, I just kind of want to throw this out there, kind of more of like a discussion than a question, but to end this out, do you have any hot takes that you're just dying to get off your chest? Like anything currently, all time, anything crazy you just want to throw out there?
Yeah, I think we need to have conversations about two players, and that's Manu Ginobili and Andre Karolinko. That's two players. That's two players. Let's talk about Manu first, right? Okay. That is a guy that just sacrificed, you know, playing times, roles. You know, that's somebody that he could have led his own team and quite possibly been a top 5 player in the game whenever he played. That's a hill that I'm willing to die on. You know, I know a lot of people are just going to go pull up Basketball Reference and say, oh, well, his best season, you know, he barely eclipsed 20 points a game. Dude's your third or fourth option. You know, he's playing 28 minutes a game. That's somebody that, you know, team first, you know, which can translate to anybody. And if you're going to be a leader, that's a direct correlation to success. So, yeah, Manu Ginobili, I want to give you your flowers. Shout out to you. You know, I unfortunately was not really blessed with the greatest basketball abilities, but the one player that I grew up watching and wanted to model my game after the best I could was Manu Ginobili. You know, the ability to be able to finish with the left, play tough, being cerebral, I think is one of the best things you can do on that basketball court. You know, and I think he's one of the smartest players ever. And then Andre Karolinko. You know, that's somebody that, you know, is just kind of a meme at this point. You know, you just see him dunking on, you know, all these players and stuff like that. But that's somebody that, you know, again, you know, it does everything you want. You know, if there's any baseball fans out there, you look at guys that are 5-tool players. There's a 5-tool player in the NBA. You know, that's Andre Karolinko. Pass, dribble, shoot, finish, you know, play defense. He gives you everything you want. You know, and that's somebody that's just one of those guys. You're going to see him, you know, dirtying up his elbows, you know, on the hardwood and stuff like that. I guess the last thing that I would finish off with is I have many issues with the NBA top 75 team. Why is Dwight Howard not on there? That's my main thing. My other thing is there's guys like Dolph Shays, Dave Dubashir. If you played in the NBA today, well, first off, you wouldn't. You know, you'd be working a 9-to-5 job. But I'm the only guy from, you know, I'd say pre-1980. Like, if you played in the NBA before the ABA-NBA merger, you have no business being on that top 75 team. You know, I'm looking at the oldest players I'm willing to go back on, you know, and put them there in that top 75 team. That's probably Oscar Robertson, Pete Maravich, Wilt Chamberlain, maybe Bill Russell. Maybe Bill Russell. I'm taking Dwight Howard over Bill Russell. Dwight Howard does everything Bill Russell did, but better.
Oof. Bill Russell has the most rings all time. That's the definition of a winning player.
Okay, there's 6 teams in the NBA at that point. I mean, there's 6 teams, man. That's like me saying, okay, well, before I came into the NBA, I played for the G League Ignite, and we won 3 rings in a row. I got to be on that 75 team. Yeah, no business being on that 75 team.
I love that.
There's somebody there that doesn't belong, and that would be you, my friend. Thank you for your contributions to the game. Fantastic player, even better human being, but you are not better than Dwight Howard. And Dwight Howard plays in Shanghai. Let's sit on that for a second.
My goodness. Oh, what about anything current? You got anything current to go off your chest?
Yeah, you know, the past NBA season was probably one of the more wild ones for headlines. Yeah. You know, you have the big issue with Ja. You know, obviously, you know, keep praying on him and, you know, that things, you know, smooth out well for him. You're looking at LeBron breaking the all-time scoring record, you know, and that deserves to get the headlines. Obviously, the Lakers are going to get him. The Knicks resurgence, you know, over there in New York, they're blossoming back into, you know, a loved basketball team. You know, but something that flew under the radar big time this past year, Paulo Banchero, you know, he might have just quietly had one of the most impressive debuts we've ever seen. And on that note, it was kind of wild, I think I saw something. He might have missed 73 pointers in a row at some point there in the dog days of the season. I think sometime around December. So if you're looking at his 3-point counting numbers, I want to say he's in the mid-20s somewhere for percentage-wise. That number is going to go up. Dude just averaged 20 points a game, 7 boards, 3 or 4 assists a game. Plays incredible defense. Paulo Banchero, he's one of the most intriguing, I'd say, athletes in all of the world at this point. Another little cool cookie about him, I don't know what his condition's called, but he has a condition where he sweats about 10 pounds of water out of himself.
I know what you're talking about. And he has to drink a special drink to maintain the weight while he's playing. Yeah.
So it's just like, he's got to deal with that. And, on top of that, he's still out there producing. I think that's somebody, it goes back to how I talked about the Magic earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be some magic down there for the next 10 years. Sure. I'm looking at him, and he's a fantastic player. And nobody talked about him.
I don't think he got nearly enough press as he deserved. And for those people who do look at the shot chucking numbers, like you were saying, he was also on a developing team. Right. So it's not like they were contending or anything. They let him develop. Right. Let's be honest. They had him out there to take those shots and to develop.
That's the best way to do it. I think the best thing you can do to these young players is throw them in the fire, and just let them figure it out. It's one of those deals where it's on the job training, right? Your best way, to improve on something is to do it. And it's one thing to be able to sit there with the vets. I don't even really know if they had any vets that were worth a while. Maybe Gary Harris. I don't really know what he's seen in his time in the NBA. But, the best way for him, to get out there is just like you said, put those shots up, command that offense. I think he did it, at a really high clip. So good for him. Let's give him his flowers.
Yeah. That's about all I had. Did you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, dude, we appreciate you coming on. I'm sure everybody enjoyed all of your mini takes. May get some comments, colorful comments on this. But I loved every second of it, man. I hope we can have you on again. That was great, dude.
We're looking forward to it. And if y'all do have anything to say, just let's hear it. We're always here for engagement and stuff like that, and just friendly banter back and forth. So
absolutely
awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. Well, thank y'all for watching. Y'all like, comment, subscribe, check out our other socials. Thank you for watching.
Peace.